Hello, I am Ryan.
Hello, I am Amy. Welcome to Listen to English Podcast.
Today's episode is Stop Overthinking, Start Talking. We're going to explore why so many English learners, struggle with nervousness and overthinking when speaking. And I'm really excited to share some practical tips to help you loosen up and just let those English skills flow.
Yes, Ryan, it's a topic that comes up quite a lot. It appears that many learners kind of get stuck in this cycle of worrying about making mistakes, and ultimately, it holds them back from reaching their full potential.
Absolutely. It's like they're building this mental wall, right, between their thoughts and their words. But here's the thing. Everyone makes mistakes, even native speakers like myself. I can't tell you how many times I've fumbled over words or completely blanked, on simple vocabulary.
But we've all been there, Ryan. It's just a natural part of language learning, and honestly, a natural part of life. The key is to not let those moments define us or prevent us from speaking up.
I love that. So let's dive right in and talk about why overthinking can actually be detrimental to your progress. Like when we overthink, we tend to put so much pressure on ourselves to be perfect, and that pressure can really backfire.
It certainly can, Ryan. When we're stressed, our brains don't function at their best. And this can directly impact our ability to think clearly and to speak fluently. We might start forgetting words, struggling with grammar, or even freezing up completely.
Yeah, it's like our minds become this jumbled mess of thoughts, and we can't seem to find the right words to express ourselves. Have you ever experienced that feeling where you know exactly what you want to say, but the words just won't come out?
Absolutely. It's like having a mental block. It's a common experience for language learners, and it often stems from that fear of making mistakes. We become so preoccupied with getting everything right that we end up, hindering our own progress.
Exactly. So how can we break free from this overthinking trap and start speaking English with more confidence? Well, we've got some great tips to share with you today. Let's start with our first tip, which is to focus on communication, not perfection. What do you think about that one, Amy?
I think it's crucial, Ryan. Studies show that the primary goal of language is to communicate, to connect with others, and to express ourselves. It's not about achieving grammatical perfection or sounding like a textbook.
I completely agree.
Mm,
Sometimes we get so caught up in the rules, right, and the technicalities of English that we forget the true purpose of language, which is to build relationships, share ideas, and just have those meaningful conversations.
exactly. And think about it. Even native speakers make grammatical errors from time to time, and it doesn't stop them from communicating effectively. So why should it stop us as English learners?
That's a great point. I remember when I was learning Spanish, I was so fixated on conjugating verbs perfectly that I would hesitate before speaking. But then I realized that, people were more interested in understanding my message than in analyzing my grammar.
It appears that the more you focus on connecting with people and expressing yourself authentically, the less you'll worry about making mistakes, and the more fluent you'll become.
That's so true. It's all about shifting our mindset from fear to confidence and from perfection to progress. So now that we've established the importance of focusing on communication over perfection, let's move on to our second tip, which is to speak more, even if it's not perfect.
This tip is all about building fluency through practice. The more you speak, the more comfortable and confident you'll become. It's like learning to ride a bike. At first, you're wobbly and you might fall a few times, but the more you practice, the smoother and more natural it becomes.
I love that analogy. It's so true. It's all about getting those reps in, right, and building up that muscle memory for speaking English. And you don't need to have long, elaborate conversations to make progress. Even short bursts of speaking practice can make a big difference.
Absolutely. You can practice with a language partner, you can record yourself speaking, or even just talk to yourself in the mirror. The key is to make speaking English a regular habit and to not be afraid to make mistakes.
That's great advice. And I think it's important to remember that mistakes are actually valuable learning opportunities. They help us to identify areas where we need to improve, and they push us to grow.
Exactly. And when we embrace mistakes as part of the learning process, we kind of take the pressure off ourselves to be perfect, and we allow ourselves to be more creative and expressive with our language.
I love that perspective. So we talked about focusing on communication over perfection and speaking more, even if it's not perfect. Now let's move on to our third tip, which is to use simple sentences.
This is a really helpful tip for overcoming overthinking. When we try to construct complex sentences with lots of clauses and fancy vocabulary, we increase the risk of getting lost in our thoughts and making errors.
Yeah, it's like we're trying to build a house of cards and one wrong move, sends the whole thing crashing down. Sometimes it's just best to keep things simple and straightforward.
Absolutely. Simple sentences are clear, concise, and easy to understand. They allow you to convey your message effectively without getting, bogged down in grammar.
For example, instead of saying, due to the inclement weather conditions, I was unfortunately unable to attend the previously scheduled appointment. You could simply say, it was raining, so I couldn't make it to the appointment.
Exactly. That's much clearer and more natural, and it gets the point across without any unnecessary complexity.
Yeah, I think sometimes we overcomplicate things in an attempt to sound more intelligent or sophisticated, but often the simplest way of saying something is the most effective.
It appears that simple sentences are your friend, especially when you're trying to overcome overthinking, so don't be afraid to use them.
Great advice. So we've covered 3 powerful tips so far. Focus on communication over perfection, speak more even if it's not perfect, and use simple sentences. Are you ready for tip number 4, Amy?
Bring it on, Ryan. I'm eager to hear what you've got.
All right, tip number 4 is listen and copy. This is all about immersing yourself in the English language and absorbing those natural rhythms, patterns, and vocabulary.
It's like training your ears to recognize the nuances of spoken English and your brain to process and reproduce those sounds.
Exactly. And there's so many ways to do this. You can watch movies and TV shows, listen to podcasts and music, or even just, have conversations with native speakers. I thought it'd be really helpful to illustrate these tips with a real-life conversation example. What do you think?
I think that's a fantastic idea, Ryan. Let's bring those tips to life and see how they play out in a natural conversation.
Okay, here we go.
Okay. Amy. Hey, Ryan. How's your day going?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Amy just finished a great workout. How about you?
I'm doing well, thanks. I just had a delicious lunch.
Oh, nice. What did you have?
I had a salad with grilled chicken. It was so good.
Sounds delicious. I'm getting hungry now.
You should grab dinner together sometime.
I'd love that. Let's do it.
Oh.
So there you have it, a short and sweet conversation between 2 friends. Now, let's unpack what made this exchange so successful. What stood out to you, Amy?
Well, first of all, I noticed that they both sounded very relaxed and natural. There wasn't any sense of tension or hesitation in their voices.
Right. It's like they were just enjoying each other's company and the words were flowing effortlessly. And I think that ease comes from, focusing on connection rather than perfection.
Absolutely. They weren't worried about making grammatical errors or using impressive vocabulary. They were simply present in the moment and engaged in the conversation.
Yeah, and even though it was a brief conversation, they managed to cover a lot of ground. They talked about their day, their food, and even made plans for the future.
Exactly. And this highlights how you can have a meaningful and enjoyable conversation without overthinking every word or sentence.
Mm-hmm. I also noticed that they used a lot of simple sentences, which we discussed earlier, as one of our key tips for overcoming overthinking. Do you remember that part, Amy?
Of course, Ryan. I think it's one of the most important takeaways from our conversation today. When we try to construct complex sentences, we often get tangled up in grammar and lose our train of thought.
Right. It's like we're trying to juggle too many balls at once, and eventually we drop them all. So by using simple sentences, we can keep our message clear and concise and avoid getting lost in the labyrinth of words.
And remember, simple sentences don't mean boring sentences. You can still convey a lot of emotion and personality through your tone of voice and your choice of words.
That's a great point, Amy. It's all about finding that balance between clarity and expressiveness. So let's go back to the conversation example for a moment and see how they applied some of the other tips we discussed.
Sounds good. I'm ready to dive back in.
Okay, so remember our first tip. Focus on communication, not perfection. Did you notice how neither Amy nor Ryan seemed concerned with speaking perfectly?
Absolutely. They allowed themselves to be imperfect, to make mistakes, and to just, go with the flow of the conversation.
Yeah. For example, when Amy said, I just had a delicious lunch, she didn't overthink the past perfect tense or worry about using a more sophisticated phrase like, I recently partook in a delightful midday meal.
Right. She simply expressed herself in a natural and authentic way. And Ryan didn't hesitate to use the colloquial phrase, sounds delicious, even though it's not grammatically perfect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it conveyed his enthusiasm and kept the conversation moving forward. And that's what matters most in communication.
Now let's talk about our second tip. Speak more, even if it's not perfect. This conversation demonstrates that even a short exchange can be valuable practice.
Yeah, they didn't need to have a lengthy philosophical discussion to gain confidence and fluency. Just a few minutes of speaking English helped them warm up their language skills and feel more comfortable expressing themselves.
And it probably left them feeling more motivated to continue practicing and to seek out more opportunities to speak English.
Exactly. It's all about building momentum and creating a positive feedback loop. The more we speak, the more confident we become. And the more confident we become, the more we speak. It's a beautiful cycle.
Now let's revisit our fourth tip: listen and copy. Although we can't see them in this audio recording, it's likely that Ryan and Amy have been exposed to a lot of spoken English, through movies, music, podcasts, or conversations with native speakers.
Exactly. And this exposure has helped them develop an intuitive sense of how English sounds and flows. It's like they've been absorbing the language through osmosis, and it's evident in their natural rhythm, intonation, and use of colloquialisms.
So there you have it, folks, a real-life example of how to put our 4 tips into action. Focus on communication, speak more, use simple sentences, and listen and copy.
And remember, this conversation was just a snapshot of a much larger journey. These tips are not magic bullets. They're tools that you can use to gradually build your confidence and fluency over time.
Exactly. It's a process of continuous learning and improvement. And the most important thing is to be patient with yourself and to enjoy the ride.
Now, before we wrap up this part of our episode, I want to leave you with one final thought. Something to ponder as you continue your English speaking journey.
I'm all ears, Ryan. What's on your mind?
Imagine yourself in a situation where you need to speak English.
Huh.
Maybe you're ordering food at a restaurant, asking for directions on the street, or having a casual conversation with a new acquaintance.
I can picture it vividly, Ryan. It's a common scenario for English learners.
Now, instead of letting fear and overthinking paralyze you, embrace the moment as an opportunity to practice and connect.
That's a powerful reframing, Ryan. Instead of seeing these situations as tests, we can see them as, chances to grow and to connect with others.
Exactly. So takeaway number 1, and I think this is the foundation of everything we've talked about today, is that overthinking is the enemy of fluency. When we get caught up in our heads, worrying about making mistakes, we actually hinder our ability to speak naturally and spontaneously.
Absolutely, Ryan. It's like trying to drive a car, with the emergency brake on. You might move forward a little bit, but you'll never reach your full speed or destination.
That's such a great analogy. It really captures the essence of what we're talking about. So instead of striving for perfection, which is an elusive and often paralyzing goal, we need to shift our focus to progress, to embracing the journey of learning and celebrating, every step we take along the way.
It appears that the more we focus on the process of communication, the joy of connecting with others, and just the satisfaction of expressing ourselves, the less those anxieties about making mistakes will hold us back.
I love that, Amy. It's all about reframing our perspective and approaching language learning with a sense of curiosity and playfulness rather than fear and self-judgment.
Exactly. And that brings us to our second takeaway, which is that practice makes progress. The more you speak English, the more comfortable and confident you'll become. It's like, learning any new skill. Whether it's playing a musical instrument, dancing, or cooking, the more you practice, the more proficient you become.
Right. It's all about building those neural pathways in our brains.
Yeah.
Strengthening those connections and making those actions feel more automatic and effortless over time.
Mm.
And you don't need to dedicate hours upon hours to practice. Even short bursts of speaking throughout the day can make a significant difference.
Absolutely, Ryan. You can chat with a language partner, watch a movie with subtitles, sing along to your favorite English songs, or even just talk to yourself in the mirror. The key is to make speaking English a regular habit, something that you do consistently and enjoyably.
And speaking of keeping things enjoyable, that leads us to our third takeaway. Keep it simple. Don't get bogged down by trying to use complex grammar or fancy vocabulary, especially when you're first starting out.
Exactly, Ryan. Stick to short, clear sentences that convey your message effectively. Remember that the primary goal of communication is to be understood, and that simplicity can often be more powerful than complexity.
It appears that we sometimes feel pressure to sound intelligent or sophisticated by using big words and complicated sentence structures. But often the most effective communicators are those who can express themselves clearly and concisely.
And remember, simple sentences don't have to be boring sentences. You can still inject, your personality, your humor, and your unique style into your communication, even when using straightforward language.
Now for our final takeaway. And I think this is one of the most enjoyable aspects of language learning. Immerse yourself in the language. Surround yourself with English as much as possible, whether it's through, music, movies, podcasts, books, or conversations with native speakers.
Absolutely, Ryan. The more you expose yourself to the rhythms, patterns, and vocabulary of authentic English, the more it will start to feel, natural and intuitive to you. It's like learning by osmosis, soaking up the language through your pores.
And it can be such a fun and rewarding experience.
Yeah.
Discovering new music, falling in love with a TV show, or connecting with someone from a different culture through the shared language of English.
It's amazing how language can open up doors to, like, new worlds, new perspectives, and new relationships. So embrace those opportunities to immerse yourself in English and allow yourself to be swept away by the beauty and diversity of this global language.
So there you have it, folks. Our 4 key takeaways for how to stop overthinking and start talking. Focus on communication, practice consistently, keep it simple, and immerse yourself in the language.
Remember, learning a language is a journey, not a race. Be patient with yourself, embrace the challenges, and celebrate every milestone along the way.
And most importantly, never give up on your dream of speaking English fluently.
You have the potential to unlock a world of possibilities through the power of language. So keep practicing, keep learning, and keep having fun.
That's all for today's episode of Listen to English podcast.
Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey. We hope you found these tips helpful, and we encourage you to put them into practice in your own English-speaking adventures.
Remember, you have the power to overcome overthinking, to embrace your unique voice, and to connect with the world in meaningful ways, through the beauty of language.
So go out there and start talking. The world is waiting to hear your story.
Bye for now.
See you next time.
If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. It really helps our channel grow and reach more English learners like you. By subscribing, you'll never miss a new episode, and by liking the video, you're letting us know you want more helpful content. Thank you for your support. It means so much to us.